Alright, now let's do a few other things here. What I'll have you do is create a brand new blend here using whatever shapes and whatever color you'd like. Doesn't really matter a whole lot here. I'll start with a blue rectangle, and I'll also create a polygon here whose fill color I'll switch to green using my color palette. I'll grab both of my shapes here and go ahead and create your blend. Object, blend, make, and by the way, there's our keyboard shortcut if you'd like to use it. There's my blend. Now I can do a few different things here using my white arrow tool in Illustrator. Obviously with my black arrow tool, the whole blend is treated as one single object, and of course I can rotate it and scale it and do all kinds of lovely things to it here with my black arrow tool. But you can do some neat things with your white arrow tool. So go ahead and click on your white arrow tool, and then I'm going to click back on my blend here. Now you'll notice that you can't click directly on your shapes here. So what I'm going to do is go into Illustrator's outline mode, Control Y on the PC or Command Y here on the Mac, and there's the edge of my shape there. So I can click on an anchor point here if I want to highlight it. In Illustrator's outline mode, it makes it much easier to see the two shapes that are part of my blend here, the starting shape and the ending shape. And of course, it's much easier to find the edges of those shapes and drag on them, as well as the anchor points of those shapes. So I can make whatever adjustments I want to either of my shapes here just by dragging on these sides here. And of course I can do this with either the starting shape in my blend or the ending shape in my blend. I make whatever change I want here. I'll head back into my outline mode, and you can see that my blend has adjusted here. I made this look more like a rectangle here. I adjusted some of my sides here. Now it's pretty tricky to see here because there's so many steps between my two blended shapes here. So here's what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to hit my V key on my keyboard. That grabs my Move tool, and I'll highlight my blend, and I'm going to go back into my blend options and switch the number of steps between my starting shape and ending shape. So let's go Object, down to Blend, into Blend Options, switch over to Specified Steps, and I'll use a much lower value again, maybe 5, something like this. There we are. Okay, there it is. And now I should be able to manipulate the paths on my objects here, the individual anchor points. So I can drag inside the center of my shape. That moves the shape around. I can grab the individual anchor points here. And depending on where I click, I'm either going to move my shape around or adjust individual anchor points and paths here. Okay, let's do a few other things. I'm going to go and grab my pen tool, and with my pen tool selected here, I can bring my cursor over the edge of one of my objects, and just looking at my cursor I can tell that I'm about to add an anchor point. I can see the plus sign appearing just to the side of my pen tool there. And if I hold down the Command key or the Control key on the PC, I can then adjust this anchor point, and you can see this ripple effect happening all the way down my blend here. Let me do that a few more times. I'll bring my pen tool over to the other side of my shape here. I see the plus appearing, so I'll single click there, and I'll hold down my Command key or the Control key on the PC and click and drag, and there's my extra point there. Now I got a curved point here because I clicked and dragged just slightly. So in other words, I can make changes to the ending shape, and also I can make changes to my starting shape here. I'm just going to hit my A key, go back to my white arrow tool here, and again I can begin manipulating the paths and anchor points that appear on these different shapes. Of course I could switch back to my pen tool here. Try just hitting the P key on your keyboard. That's a faster way to switch back to your pen tool. And of course I can also delete existing anchor points, and you'll see that ripple effect happening right across my entire blend here. So I'll select this guy just by holding down the Command key and clicking, or the Control key on the Mac there. Hover over top of an anchor point, single click, and you can see that effect rippling right down my blend there. Here's another neat thing I can do. I'll hit my A key to switch back to my white arrow tool, select my ending shape here, and I'm going to hold down Option or Alt on the PC and click and drag, and that creates a copy of that shape. Now what I've done is I've just continued on my blend here, and with this ending shape still selected here, I'll go and change the fill color. And there's that shape there. I could come in here, select a shape in the middle of my blend, and press delete. And now I have a blend going from blue to blue. That isn't very exciting here, so I'll grab the shape on the end and fill it with a different color. Okay, so I've done a real number on my blend here. So what I'm going to do is create a whole new blend because I'd like to show you some other things here, but this is getting pretty messy here. So I'm just going to hit Control A to select all and hit delete. Okay, so I'm going to go and create a more simplistic blend here to show you some additional things. So once again, you can use whatever shapes you'd like. I'm going to keep things fairly simple here with some rectangles. Here's one rectangle. I will do the Alt click and drag or the Option click and drag trick to create a duplicate here. Fill it with a second color, maybe a green or something like this. There it is. Highlight both shapes, and then I'll go and create my blend. Object, blend, and then make. There it is. I'll go in and specify the number of steps that I'd like on my blend. I'll type in the number 8. There's my blend. Now a few things. I'll go back to my white arrow tool and highlight my first shape here. And as we saw just a few minutes ago, when I click and drag in the middle of a shape, the entire blend is going to move on me. But what I'm after at this point is the path that connects my two shapes together. In fact, the easiest way to see the path that connects my two shapes is to go into the outline mode. So I'm going to hit Command Y or Control Y on the PC, and there's the path between my two shapes there. Of course, I can drag on the path, but that moves the entire blend. And what I'd like to do is add on some additional anchor points on this path. In other words, I want to be able to curve this path if I want. So rather than my blend going in a straight line, I want to curve it just a little bit. Hit the P key on your keyboard. That switches you to your pen tool. And I'm going to hover over top of my path. I can see the plus appearing beside my cursor there. A little tricky to see it there, but it's there. Now I've clicked a few times on my path here because I wasn't seeing anything showing up, but I have my anchor points turned off. So try hitting Command H on your keyboard or Control H on the PC, and you can see that I've added on these extra points here. So in fact what I can do is just hover over top of them and subtract some of them out here. There's my sole point left there, and I should be able to hold down my Command key or my Control key on the PC and click and drag on it here, and that actually bends my line there. Now you don't see a whole lot here, so let's go back to our preview mode and see what we get. Again, Command Y, Control Y, that brings me back, and now my blend is following that line. Not bad, but I want to do a little bit more. So I'll go back into my outline mode, and I'll go and Command click or Control click on that anchor point. There he is there. Don't forget I'm still on my pen tool. Holding down the Command key or the Control key, what that does is switches me back to the last selection tool that I had activated, which in my case is the white arrow tool. Now this time what I'm going to do is hold down my Alt key or my Option key, and that switches me to my Convert Direction Point tool. And now I can click and drag on this point here, and what happens when I click and drag is I get these direction lines coming out from my anchor point. That allows me to curve this line here. In fact, I can add as many anchor points as I want onto this path that's controlling my blend. Maybe something like this. I'll head back into my preview mode, and there's my blend. And as we've seen all along here, at any time I can go and grab my black arrow tool, highlight the entire blend, go back into my blend options, add in more steps or specify some distance or whatever I'd like to do to my blend. So there's a few quick examples of creating some basic blends here.